The Bills have a couple of stud young corners, but plenty of questions about depth and in the slot. We're going to explore it all today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I am your host of Locked On Bills. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and the #1 sports podcast network. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Well, folks, welcome in. We're talking cornerbacks today on this episode, and there's a lot to dive into, including a couple of good-looking young corners that the Bills have, but a lot of questions beyond, of course, Christian Benford and Maxwell Hairston. So we're going to explore it all today on this episode, and then we'll have safeties tomorrow, and we will have assessed all of the position groups, kind of looking back at 2025 and projecting things into 2026. So let's get to it. We'll start with Christian Benford, a 2022 sixth-round pick, number 185 overall. He's 25 years old. He'll turn 26 in September, and he's entering year one of his 4-year, $69 million contract that he signed last offseason. In 2025, he played in 14 games, and in those 14 games on the field for 96% of the snaps defensively, collected 43 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 4 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, and 2 fumble recoveries. As for his 2025 review, he started slow. There's no question about it. I think the entire Bills secondary started slow as they were trying to work through the Taylor Rapp situation where he just was a major detriment to the group. And once Jordan Poyer kind of stepped into the lineup, you saw literally every player in the secondary take a big step forward and things really normalized. And of course, Christian Benford was part of that, where for the first 5-6 weeks, you're like, yo, what is happening here with Christian Benford? What happened to this guy that I watched in 2023 and 2024? Well, he came all the way back starting in week 6 and played at an extremely high level down the stretch, at the level that you would have expected from Christian Benford. So it was good for that to be put in the rear view mirror, but you can't ignore the beginning of the season. But he did settle in wonderfully, and he had those big showcase games along the way against Nico Collins, DK Metcalf, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown. Did a great job on Cortland Sutton in the divisional round loss. You know, he started to draw big assignments, and he shut a lot of really good players down. And, of course, we know how good he is as a tackler. We know what he brings in terms of defending the run. But this past year, you really saw him come into his own as a blitzing corner. And you saw that last year a little bit, like that Detroit game in 2024. You know, he had that big corner blitz that got a sack on Jared Goff about midfield, and it was an awesome play. And then you saw that happen even more this year, where that blitzing element of what Benford, offers is now something that this team has tapped into. And so just a really quality all-around player that can really do everything. He can play all different types of coverages, whether that's off man, press man, zone, and of course the run defense, the tackling, the blitzing. He is a stud. And, obviously the Bills are transitioning into a really different style of defense. And from a coverage perspective, from a corner perspective, I think the only thing that's really going to be different is they'll probably play man coverage maybe 10 to 15% more. Obviously, the NFL is still a zone league. Even the most man-aggressive defenses in the entire NFL, they still only run man coverage like 35 to 40% of the time. And so it'll still be a lot of zone, but another 10-15% a man, and I really have no concern about Christian Benford being able to hold up in man coverage. And so what's the 2026 outlook? Perform at a high level. He's a big part of the plan. It's year one of this contract extension. He's turning 26 in September. Like, the Bills should be expecting high-level corner play for the next 4 years out of Benford. And I'm excited to see it. I have really enjoyed his growth as a player. I think that's been obvious to see. Obviously, he came in as a rookie and, very quickly pushed the first-round pick, Kyer Elam, to the side and played over him. And then he just got better and better. But what I've really enjoyed about Christian Benford over the last year has been seeing his personality more and more, and listen to the way that he talks about his process and his teammates and his coaching and his own habits. I've really, really gained such a deep appreciation for the overall package of Christian Benford. So easily one of my favorite players on the team, probably my favorite player on the defense. And I'm excited to see him transition with this defense and continue to perform at a high level. Maxwell Hairston, let's talk about him next. A 2025 first-round pick, number 30 overall. 22 years old. He'll turn 23 in August, and he's entering year two of his 4-year, $15.3 million rookie deal. Of course, there's a fifth-year option tacked on the back of that. In 2025, he played in 11 games, started 3 games on the field for 56% of the defensive snaps in those 11 games that he was available for. Had 18 tackles, 5 pass breakups, and 2 interceptions. Of course, the season started and ended with an injury, right? Injury in training camp, and we don't even get to see him play in the preseason. He misses, the first, it was like 6 weeks or so of the year. And then he comes back, and I thought he really settled in very well. All things considered, he missed a couple months of practice as a rookie and came in and I thought played reasonably well, all things considered. Then, unfortunately, he gets injured in that Week 18 game and misses the postseason games. But I like what I saw. I saw a player that had a lot of confidence in how he played. It didn't look too big for him. He was physical. He tackled well. You saw him make some plays on the ball. Now, he also had some, moments that he'd love to have back, but I think that's healthy, right? Like, you want to have coachable moments, and everything that I saw from him that was an issue was very much a teachable thing. I think about giving up an explosive run when he's the backside corner and not being, more deliberate about how he squeezes that down and gets himself in position to be that backside defender. There were a couple of times, especially against T. Higgins, where he was a little over-reliant on his speed and ball skills and needed to be a little bit more deliberate about getting into that frame of the receiver and not just trusting that you can turn and run and play the ball, but you got to be sticky and squeeze and get in that hip pocket. And this is all stuff that I showed on the All-22 review clips that I sent out to everybody in the Substack and Subtext community, where I really kind of highlighted a lot of this stuff throughout the year. And I love how it all improved, and you could kind of see it and feel it week after week. And so as for the 2026 outlook here, stay healthy, become an impact starter. And I love the potential of this corner pair of Christian Benford and Maxwell Hairston. I think they're very complementary skill sets, where I feel like Benford's the guy that can match up with the bigger bodied X receivers and provide a nice, answer to those types of guys, where Maxwell Hairston's the player that has the athleticism to run with anyone in the world. And so that's a really nice complementary pair of skill sets. And these dudes just stay healthy, and I think they got a chance to be one of the better pairs in the entire league. So I'm excited to see that all come together. Now, beyond that, there are questions, depth questions on the outside. Taron Johnson in the slot. We'll get into all that here next, so folks, be sure to stick with me. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online, and they'll handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, and it'll give you a real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it all. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to living your life. Schedule that appointment with a local TurboTax expert today. All right, folks, welcome back. Let's talk about Tredavious White. Was a 2025 free agent signing, but of course we know was a 2017 first-round pick. He's 31 years old. In fact, he turned 31 back in January. His contract has expired. He completed his one-year, $3 million deal. In 2025, he played in 16 games, and in those 16 games on the field for 75% of the defensive snaps, collected 40 tackles, 6 for loss, 10 pass breakups, an interception. He had a completion percentage against his coverage of 49% and a passer rating against his coverage of 72.5. He had a great year. He clearly helped this team. You know, I think this team would have been in trouble without Tredavious White, based on, you know, Maxwell Hairston's injury, and then Dorian Strong starts in week 1 and he gets injured very quickly after that. Out for the year. Obviously, Dane Jackson can't play. And so Trey White was huge, absolutely huge. And so I love the year that he had. I love that no matter what happens from here, I think he ended things on a high note. Of course, you know, the end of the Denver game was really not great. But if you zoom out and you look at the year as a whole, I think Trey White gave this team probably more than anybody expected. And I think that's an awesome way for him to potentially end his time in Buffalo, because his contract is expired. And so as we look towards 2026, I think you appreciate what he did. You appreciate what he's done. But I personally don't feel much urgency for him to be back. It's a little bit like the Matt Milano conversation that we had yesterday. You should feel fortunate to get as much as you did this year out of the player. But the bigger picture tells you that he's an aging player on the wrong side of 30 and has had concerning injuries. And I love that he's a couple years removed now from the Achilles and the ACL. But corners on this side of 30, it's not typically a position that, you know, ages gracefully. And so I wouldn't be disappointed if Tredavious White was back, but I certainly don't feel the urgency. And maybe Trey White looks at the season that he had and says, look, I can still start. Shaq Thompson said that, right? He came out and had a very, you know, passionate Instagram session where he was talking about how he views himself as a starter and he'd love to come back to Buffalo, but he's not coming back for pennies. And the Bills got a great value because he's had injuries, but now he's proven himself and he feels like he can start and he wants some money. Maybe Trey White feels the same way. And of course, Trey White is a Sean McDermott guy, right? Like the first draft pick under McDermott, and Sean McDermott's not around. And I think this is your opportunity to kind of move on from these types of players. I know that might not be comfortable to hear, but the Matt Milanos, the Trey Whites, the Jordan Poyers, the Jordan Phillips, the Cam Lewises, the A.G. Epinesa. All right, we're good, right? Like that has run its course. This defense is taking on a new direction, a new identity under new coaching. And for as much as I love and appreciate a lot of those players, this is the NFL. Like, transition happens, and I think we have to be comfortable with that and leverage this opportunity to get younger, cheaper, and probably better in some areas. So I think you can love Trey White and especially appreciate this past year, but I personally don't feel a lot of urgency that he should return. Let's talk about Taron Johnson, a 2018 fourth-round pick. He's 29. He'll turn 30 in July. He's entering year 2 of his 3-year, $30.7 million contract. And you're probably wondering, how did the Bills get out of this? Well, it's not an easy situation. It will not happen before June 1st. There's just not any cap benefit at all. Now, the Bills could release him with a post-June 1st designation, and you'd get $8.7 million in 2026 cap savings, keeping in mind you don't get it until after June 1st. So that doesn't help you right now become cap compliant. It doesn't help you right now sign players or anything like that. That money does not become available until after June 1st. So you get $8.7 million in savings, but it comes with $2.7 million in dead cap in 2026. And here's where it stings: $6.7 million in dead cap in 2027. You could see, kind of like the Terrell Bernard conversation we had yesterday, it would behoove the Bills to find a way for Taron Johnson to have a role this year. And I'm not saying that role should be the primary slot defender, but that's where you're going to get the most value out of Taron Johnson. And so hopefully a different type of role and a different type of defense can help Taron Johnson. In 2025, he played in 13 games, was on the field for 74% of snaps in those 13 games, 57 tackles, 1 for loss, 4 pass breakups. I do think he struggled in 2025. The run defense really fell off. You know, that was kind of his thing, right? The best run defending nickel in the league. And that just wasn't the case this year. A little bit like Terrell Bernard, where something about their processing, it was impacted by whatever physical ailments they had, where for whatever reason they just didn't process and trigger and get to the football like they have in years past. And I worry that the style of play that the Bills had Taron Johnson execute for so many years, you know, kind of brought the age quicker. I mean, this guy played on the second level for years, every snap, right? Taking on pullers, taking on lead blockers, and tackling running backs. Well, I guess I'm a little unsurprised that entering his age 30 season, you're worried if he's got enough juice. And then from a coverage perspective, I thought he was targeted quite a bit this year, and teams kind of went after him. And he gave up a good amount of separation and gave up a decent amount of production. So as for the outlook here, I am concerned. He's had injuries the last couple of years. Like I said, I think the age has kind of come quickly. Some people have invoked the idea of moving him to safety. I don't have a lot of optimism about that. He's never done it. He's never played safety. And he's a player that when I watch him in the slot, I don't feel like he gets more comfortable as routes elongate. I feel like he gets less comfortable. And so now we want to ask him to play deep zones and carry routes vertically down the field. I don't know. I don't really see that working out. And then fitting the run from depth is a whole lot different than fitting the run from the slot. It's not like sometimes he played safety for the Bills. He really never did. He never played in those deeper alignments. So I struggle to get excited about that possibility. I think it's a good conversation to have, but I don't see much from Taron Johnson through the years that makes me feel super confident about him going and playing safety. And I'd say similar things about Tredavious White. I think there's, you know, an urgency to kind of bring up that idea. Well, can you just play Trey White at safety? I think you could maybe play him as a dime defensive back, but again, Trey White in deeper alignments never has done that, has never spaced the field as a one high or a split zone safety. And in his best day, he wasn't a very good tackler or run support player. And now you want him to do more of that at safety? I just don't see it. I just don't see it for either player. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm not saying those are not good ideas to discuss, but I have a hard time being super convinced that it'll work out. Let's talk Cam Lewis, a 2020 undrafted free agent. He's 28. He'll turn 29 in April. His contract also expired. He's completed his 2-year, $3.1 million deal. In 2025, he played in 17 games, on the field for 38% of snaps in those 17 games, 43 tackles, 1 for loss, 4 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles. Super versatile player, right? He played 135 snaps in the slot, 185 in the box, 70 as a deep safety, and then, of course, 219 special team snaps, and he's one of 7 players on the team to have 200 or more special team snaps. So he fills a lot of different roles. He's a valuable player. So the 2025 review, versatility, was the backup slot, right, when the Bills were without Taron Johnson for a few games, played a little safety, played a little dime back, special teams. I think he's a perfectly fine player for all the roles that he can fill. I will say, though, as we get into the 2026 outlook, as an expired contract, you don't have to bring him back for another season. I want Jim Leonhard to get his own guys, right, like a Cam Lewis. This was a McDermott guy, right, a versatile defensive back that they trusted him and appreciated probably a lot of his habits. I want Jim Leonhard to find his own Cam Lewis that'll be a versatile depth player for a number of years and, kind of fits the system. So I'm not afraid of these transitions, and I think Cam Lewis falls right into that conversation of, hey, really appreciate your story, what you've done, how you've helped this team. It's run its course. And so I'd be perfectly fine if Cam Lewis is not back. All right, coming up next, I want to talk about Dorian Strong and what we've learned there. There's a few players the Bills have signed to futures deals, and we'll tie a ribbon on everything by considering what the Bills have and what they need at the cornerback position. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. The winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. You'll have the drama, of course, of the curling matches that start slow but get intense fast, those speed skating races that are decided by inches, hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off. Even those niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition, and FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, folks, welcome back. Let's talk about Dorian Strong. Was a rookie, 2025 fifth-round pick. He's 23. He'll turn 24 in May, entering year 2 of his 4-year, $4.5 million deal. Played in 4 games, of course, started week 1 at corner in that win over the Ravens. And in those 4 games was on the field for 46 special team snaps. I think he was going to have a big role on teams. And then he's out for the year, right? He has a neck injury, and he's out for the entire season. And I thought things were trending in a really good direction as a player that I think most people that watched his tape in college realize that he's a pretty good football player and does some good things in camp and preseason and starts in week 1. The Bills win the game. Dorian Strong really wasn't an issue at all. You're thinking, okay, all right, maybe a decent little depth player here. Looks like a good player on special teams. And the next thing you know, neck injury, injured reserve, and things got quiet. And you were kind of concerned based on the messaging that Sean McDermott had that it could be a bigger issue. He didn't really want to say much about it. And then Brandon Beane spoke on this a couple weeks ago and said, quote, "It's a very serious deal. He's potentially going to have a procedure that will determine whether he can play." And so shortly after those comments, Dorian Strong made an Instagram post with a picture of himself in a Bills uniform. And this is what he said. He said, "Grateful for it all. These past couple of months have been crazy. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, but I have been able to get my mental right. I'm excited to have this procedure and get back and be better than ever. I appreciate everybody who reached out. I appreciate the Mafia for support and prayers." As of this recording, I'm recording this on Wednesday afternoon, he had the procedure because he's since posted pictures of himself in a hospital room and with some type of neck brace on. We don't know exactly what the procedure was, but obviously this is pretty big, potentially career threatening. And based on what Brandon Beane said, the procedure will determine whether he can play or not. Sounds like Dorian Strong is very much optimistic, but I'm sure there's elements to how this heals, and it's a neck injury. Like, you're not playing around with this stuff. Like, it'll either heal the right way or won't or whatever. Like, I'm not trying to speculate here, but a season-ending neck injury that ends in this procedure at this point with this type of messaging, there's a lot to be concerned about here. And trust me, I think anybody would love for him to be good to go and step back into this lineup and provide really intriguing depth and special teams. But obviously the health of his neck, right, is at the forefront here. So I don't know what you can count on here other than we're more aware of the circumstances. And I'm sure everyone would agree with me and say that we're rooting for you, we're praying for you, and hope to see you on the field again, man. All right, so there's a couple of futures deals. The Bills signed MJ Devonshire to Corey Couch, Daryl Porter. It's a futures deal, so they'll be part of the mix for 2026. Those are all players that were like on the practice squad this past year. Dane Jackson finished the year on the active roster. I'm not sure there's really anything to say here. Like, he can't play. You got Dane Jackson. I'm thrilled for the career that you had, but I mean, the guy steps in for one play and gets cooked on a touchdown in the playoffs. I mean, bad defensive play call, but also just it's kind of what his career has been. Sort of in position, but gives up a ton of production. Like, it's over with in Buffalo. I'm sure if Sean McDermott was the head coach of some team, Dane Jackson could go play for him. But this has got to be done here. All right, so let's tie a ribbon. What do the Bills have? Christian Benford and Maxwell Hairston. You love that. That's a great place to start. Beyond that, not really sure. I think Dorian Strong, you'd love to feel comfortable with him, that he's potentially your third corner. But again, we don't really know what to expect there. So you need some depth. You need to feel comfortable with your corner depth. And look, I mean, Christian Benford's missed time, it feels like, every year. Maxwell Hairston, as a rookie, he missed time. You need to have a CB3 that you have a level of trust in. So the Bills need to find a meaningful CB3 here. And then, of course, really kind of fill out this depth chart as well at corner. And then you have Taron Johnson, and there's not a lot of optimism that I have for his ability to just step right back in and be the slot. I think he at least needs competition. And you need a long-term idea here. And maybe that long-term idea is Jordan Hancock. We're going to talk Jordan Hancock with safeties. But maybe that's a player that you think about. But one thing that will be true about the slot in this defense under Jim Leonhard is I think you will see more options. I don't think the Bills will have one primary slot player. They might have some safeties that'll play in the slot. They'll probably play a little bit more in terms of base defense. They might like different matchups in the slots. They might have different types of players. So, we'll see where that goes. And ideally, based on the contract, Taron Johnson, can stabilize in some ways and provide good value to the team. I don't know that it'll be equal to the contract that he signed, but I'd love for the Bills to find a way to make that work. But regardless, I think you need to be thinking about the long term in the slot. And again, I think that slot position is different moving forward. It's no longer going to be like an 80% of snaps or, in some years under McDermott, 100% of snaps. So it'll have a different look and feel, but they got to have the right idea. And that'll be something they need to address this offseason. All right, folks, there you have it. We've talked cornerbacks. We got safeties coming up on Friday. We'll have Bill Squad on Thursday afternoon, so don't miss that. Plenty of content. You know how we do here every day. Bills discussion. So don't miss any of it. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.